Picture this. You are standing on a hillside across the water. Behind you, your family, your children, everything you own, wrapped in whatever you could carry. And across the narrow stretch of sea in front of you, your city is on fire. Athens is burning. The Persian army has walked through the gates, looted the temples, and set the Acropolis alight. You can see the orange glow from where you stand. You can smell the smoke drifting across the water. The greatest city in Greece is being erased in front of your eyes, and there is nothing you can do but watch. This is September 480 BC. The Persian Empire, the largest empire the world has ever seen, is finishing what it started. King Xerxes has already marched his army across a bridge of boats over the Hellespont. He has already swallowed Thrace, Macedonia, and Thessaly whole. He has already crushed 300 Spartans at Thermopylae and left them dead in a mountain pass. Now Athens is ash. And somewhere out in that dark water, 370 Greek ships, crewed by fishermen, merchants, and rowers who had never fought a naval battle in their lives, were about to face 800 Persian warships. His name was Themistocles, and he was not a king, not a general born into military glory, not a man of noble blood. He was a politician, an Athenian statesman who had spent the last 3 years doing something his fellow citizens called paranoid and wasteful: building ships. In 483 BC, Athens had discovered a rich vein of silver in its mines at Laurion. Every citizen expected a share of the windfall. Themistocles stood up in the assembly and proposed something different. Take the silver, build 200 warships. He told them the real enemy was not Sparta, the rival city-state they had been feuding with for decades. The real enemy was coming from the east. Most people thought he was being dramatic. He was not. Now, 3 years later, with Athens burning on the horizon and the Persian fleet sitting in open water with 800 ships, Themistocles was the only man with a plan. He had been studying the water between Salamis Island and the mainland, a narrow channel, roughly a mile wide at its tightest point, and he understood something about that channel that the Persians had not yet realized. In open water, 800 ships beat 370 every time. In a narrow channel, 800 ships became a problem. The Greek commanders were arguing. Gathered on the island of Salamis, the allied Greek admirals were terrified. Sparta and Corinth wanted to retreat south, protect the Peloponnese, abandon Salamis and Athens entirely. The debate had been going for days. Men were losing their nerve. Themistocles needed the Persians in that narrow channel, but first he needed the Greeks to stay and fight, and he was running out of time to convince them. So he did something extraordinary. He sent a slave, a trusted man named Xerxes, across the water in a small boat in the middle of the night to row to the Persian fleet. Xerxes carried a message, delivered as if from a friend. The Greeks were panicking. They were planning to escape under cover of darkness. If Xerxes moved his fleet now, he could block both exits of the strait and trap them. It was a lie wrapped inside a truth. The Greeks were panicking. That part was real. But the escape plan was invented. Themistocles needed Xerxes to move his fleet into the strait during the night so that dawn came, the Persian ships would be exhausted, cramped, and already inside the killing ground. Xerxes believed it. He ordered his fleet to move. The trap was baited. Now it had to close. Imagine 800 warships trying to move through a channel in the dark. No radio, no lighthouses bright enough to coordinate that many vessels. Oarsmen who had already rowed all day, now ordered to row through the night to block the exits of the strait before the Greeks could escape. Ships bumped into each other, formations lost their shape in the darkness. Crews who were supposed to be resting were at their oars for hours. By the time the first gray light of dawn began to show over the hills of Attica, the Persian fleet had been awake all night, compressed into a channel far too narrow for their numbers and arranged in a formation nobody had planned. On the Greek side, something different. Themistocles had let his crews sleep. They had eaten, they had drunk water, some of them had prayed. When the light came, the Greek oarsmen were rested, fed, and ready. They could see the Persian ships across the narrowing water, crammed together, overlapping oars, the colossal machine of the world's greatest navy suddenly looking exactly like what it was in that channel, a crowd trying to fit through a door. The Greek triremes moved first, long, low warships, 120 feet from bow to stern, powered by 170 oarsmen stacked in 3 rows. At ramming speed, a trireme hit like a moving wall of bronze-tipped timber. The entire strategy was simple. Get your ram into the side of an enemy ship before they can get theirs into you. In open water, the Persians were better at this. More ships, more experience on the open sea. But in the Strait at Salamis, the Persian ships could not maneuver. Every time a Persian captain tried to turn his vessel, another Persian ship was in the way. Every time a formation tried to organize, the cramped water made it impossible. Ships that were trying to advance were blocked by ships trying to retreat. Ships trying to retreat were rammed from behind by their own fleet pressing forward. The Greek triremes punched into the chaos with one clear advantage. They knew exactly where they were going. Straight ahead, into the mass, ram, back out, turn, ram again. The sound would have been extraordinary. Timber splitting, men screaming in languages from across the known world, Persian, Egyptian, Phoenician, Lydian, all of them going into that cold, dark water when their ships broke apart beneath them. Xerxes watched all of it. He had set up a golden throne on a cliff overlooking the strait so he could watch his navy destroy the Greeks and personally record which of his commanders performed best. He had brought scribes. He expected to be writing down names for promotion. Instead, he sat on his throne and watched his fleet die in front of him. Ship after ship capsizing, burning, sinking, the water filling with wreckage and bodies. His admirals who had pressed into the strait, now finding no room to fight, no room to retreat, no room to do anything except absorb the punishment the Greek rams were delivering with mechanical regularity. The men drowning in the strait were not just sailors. Many were soldiers, Persian soldiers who had been placed aboard the ships because Xerxes wanted extra fighters for the boarding actions he expected. These men were wearing armor. When their ships went down, the armor dragged them straight to the bottom. Persian soldiers who had crossed mountains and rivers and the Hellespont itself to reach Greece drowned in a mile-wide channel because their king had believed a message delivered by a slave in the night. Xerxes left his throne. He pulled his army back from Greece. He crossed back over the Hellespont and returned to Persia. The invasion that had been meant to erase Greek civilization from the map was over. Here is what the title means and why it is not an exaggeration. The Greek oarsmen at Salamis were not professional soldiers. Athens had built its fleet in 3 years. The rowers who powered those triremes were recruited from the lowest class of Athenian citizens, the Fetes, men who owned little or no land, farmers, potters, fishermen, men who in any previous war would have been too poor to serve in the army because the army required you to buy your own armor. These were not warriors. They were laborers who had been handed an oar. Against them, the Persian navy, drawn from the greatest maritime powers of the ancient world, Phoenicia, whose sailors had been navigating the Mediterranean for centuries, Egypt, whose fleet had existed longer than Athens had been a city, Ionia, Cyprus, Cilicia, cultures that had grown up on the water. And the farmers won, not because they were braver, not because they were stronger, but because one man had read the water correctly 3 years ago and built the right tool for the right place. And then, when the moment came, had the nerve to bait the trap with a lie and trust that the geography would do the rest. The scholars who have spent their lives studying this period argue about what would have happened if Xerxes had won at Salamis. The answer is not certain. History rarely is, but the possibilities are significant. Persian victory at Salamis likely meant the end of the Greek resistance. With control of the sea, Xerxes could supply his army indefinitely, cut off the Greek city-states from each other, and reduce them one by one. There would have been no Greek Golden Age as we know it. The democracy that Athens was experimenting with, a radical, imperfect, revolutionary idea that government could belong to citizens rather than kings, would have died before it had a chance to spread. The philosophy, the theater, the mathematics, the architecture, the political ideas that centuries later would shape Rome, and through Rome shape the entire Western world, all of it was downstream of a civilization that survived because farmers beat the world's strongest navy in a channel 1 mile wide. Themistocles understood something most people in power never figure out. The strongest army does not win. The army that chooses the right ground wins. The biggest navy does not win. The navy that fights in the right water wins. Xerxes had 800 ships and the resources of the largest empire on earth. Themistocles had a channel, a lie, and 3 years of ships built on a silver mine. The channel was enough.